Hi there. Welcome to a Carlton Witch Ramble. This time about the team that seems to be stealing all of our players. It is St Kilda. So let's look at the energy of St Kilda because, look, to be honest, I've never really been that interested in St Kilda. I don't vibe with their energy. I often call them stomping-foot little babies. Um, I don't think their vengeful leader is the right person for them. That's nothing personal against you, Ross, but you know I'm right. So let's have a little bit of a look at St. Kilda's energy because you're not going to be surprised about some of it. And look, honestly, since I've been doing astrology for sports, I don't actually know how it works as well as it does. But come with me on this fucking hilarious journey, okay? This is the energy makeup of the St. Kilda football team. And I doubt you're going to be surprised at some of this energy. Okay. So the ego self, the internal energy, the light in which St. Kilda shine its energy through is one that is very fiery and really only knows how to identify with itself first, has a problem with relationships, doesn't know how to balance them out. They are very initiator energy, start a fight kind of energy. There is an immaturity to it, usually within the emotional space, because this archetype of Aries that is what sits in the ego self placement for St. Kilda. It is the first archetype of the zodiac. So there is an immature quality to it. It does have to go on a bit of a journey to learn about its emotions. Okay. So this overall energy of St. Kilda, it is shared across a number of teams. The Hawks are an Aries energy team. Gold Coast are an Aries energy team. There's a couple of other ones. Okay. So when we go into the emotional style, and this is where I think my call of stomping foot little babies really comes into it. Okay. The emotional style and the communication style of the St. Kilda football team. Okay. So when I say manipulation to self, manipulative to self without depth, this emotional style, it kind of tells itself that it doesn't have feelings. I don't have emotions. They get in the way. I'm not going to stop and think about them. Or it kind of goes, oh, that's sadness. Move on. Okay, so there isn't a lot of depth to it. This Gemini archetype is a fast moving archetype. So when it is the energy in which your emotional style comes through, there doesn't seem to be a lot of depth. We just keep moving. Okay, but at the same time, we still feel things. We still feel things. We just don't want to stop and feel them. Okay, and again, that initiator Aries archetype, he doesn't want to stop either. So then the communication style is very fucking fiery. And in that same way that there is an immaturity to it, the communication style will start shit. Because why? Because I'm having feelings that I don't want to admit to myself. So instead, I'm going to project it out and start shit. Okay. Then the relationship style, how they build relationships, this style is very materialistic. It's very outward focused. And it tends to be we build relationships that make us look good to other people. We build relationships that other people think are like luxury. Okay. So it's the idea of like having people within the club that are names that people think are good. And then let's move on to the motivation style and the aggression style of the overall St. Kilda team, which is hilarious because this is the masculine energy placement, right? So where your motivation comes from, what sort of aggression style you have. Okay. Now, this is the Scorpio archetype, which is Ross. Just going to add that in there. We'll get to that later, but it is a very intense, obsessive, emotional motivation style. Okay. Now, that is what makes St. Kilda very fucking emotional, even though they're not going to agree to that. Okay. Because they have that Gemini emotional style, which constantly is like, no, I'm not emotional, but actually, you are motivated predominantly from emotions. From obsessive emotions. Scorpio archetype also has a part to it that is very fucking vindictive and jealous, and it is very, very much enjoying of revenge. Okay. So their daddy, Mr. Ross, the coach, is a Scorpio, also very intense and emotional, obsessive, and vengeful. And I will get to that later. And so then we look at the growth style. And this is particularly interesting when we are doing this because they've attracted the sort of people that they've attracted, right? So We then get this growth style that is very lucky, okay? This Leo archetype as your growth style here is the luckiest archetype you can have there. And it comes with a lot of drama and it comes with being childish, very much so. And it grows its best when it gets to be the center of attention. Also very interesting. Okay. Then when we go to this inner belief style, there is a uniqueness of self that is important. Okay. And there is a coldness that comes with this. All right. The Aquarius archetype is quite cold, it's quite rebellious. And when it comes here in your inner belief system and in your discipline style, the discipline style has to be authentic to the energy, right? Because uniqueness of self is very fucking important. So the way that mixes with the relationship style there is like we need people who look good, who are names, who can make us seem great. Okay. And there is a luck that comes with that, obviously, because we can grow through the luck that these people are bringing toward us. And the more unique individuals we can have within the team, the easier it is for us to be disciplined and the easier it is for believe that we can do it, that we can win. Okay. So, how it makes changes, again, in this Leo archetype, one of the things that it will do is challenge authority or challenge the rules or challenge what everybody else thinks. Okay. And it does come with a bit of drama and it does come with being a little bit scattered. So it's the sort of growth and the sort of change that you don't really see. It's not consistent, right? Like every now and then, bam, right? We're going to challenge this thing that everyone thinks is normal and we're going to challenge that, but we're probably gonna be a little bit scattered. We're probably gonna be a little bit dramatic about it. And I think if you if you look at the way in which they have acquired TDK and JSOS, I think you can see the scattered, I think you can see the drama, and I think you can see this challenge of like, we're gonna steal these players, right? And so then we look at where the St Kilda Football Club holds its past wounds, and they are wounds that are about their self-expression, and they are wounds that come from, the way that they are perceived through that fiery ego self, through that fiery communication style, okay? So these are wounds that affect that, and that makes it more fiery because the immature quality to the Aries archetype and the way they are all linked here is that the more wounded its identity feels, the more stomping foot little toddler it gets. Okay. Now we get to the particularly juicy and interesting part of the St Kilda Football Club's team. So the idea of fear, the idea of power are in the same theme within our psyche. Okay. And when we look at the St Kilda Football Club, we can see power, but also the things that it's fearful of are money and materialism. Okay. So this is kind of the energy of like power. Their belief system is power is money and looking good is money. And like we lock into that and then we're very stubborn around it. And the fear that comes with this placement is change. The fear that comes with this is having to get out of your comfort zone, is having to do things in a slightly different way. Okay. But the understanding that power comes from money, hilarious. And then we look at these 2, and these 2 made me laugh. Okay, so one of the things that they're here to learn, right? Because, we get this fear and power in this Taurus archetype, and Taurus is hardworking for the sake of reward, okay? And you wanna look good while you're working hard, and then you wanna have the reward at the end that makes you look even better, okay? So what they're here to learn, what their future focus is as a football club is to learn how to work hard for reward, is to understand that money and abundance and financial success comes through hard work, daily work that's not always given a reward. Okay. And the comfort zone, the karmic energy, and this screams fucking war chest to me, is in investment, is in inheritance, is in like just it quite literally is daddy's money, right? Like the comfort zone doesn't want to work. It wants to be the receiver of a fucking inheritance war chest. Okay. So that's where their comfort zone is. That is their past karmic energy, is in having the fucking war chest, is in having like this inherited, self-entitled kind of focus when it comes to abundance, when it comes to stability there. And that's why they are here to learn how to work hard for the money, how to be okay not getting a reward without becoming a stomping foot little child, and how to find power and how to lock in to the daily work that earns hard work. Okay. That earns a reward for the hard work. So when we come down to these next interesting placements, these are always very interesting when we look at them as collectives here. But the comfort zone and the karmic energy being in that, like, I deserve it. I don't want to work hard for it. I just want to like deserve it. Then we go to this rejected self, right? So this position in our psyche, it's the parts that we reject about ourselves, and it talks about where we've been made to feel guilt or shame, or where we fear being misunderstood. Okay, and so for the St Kilda football team, this is happening in an archetype of Leo. Okay, so this does affect how it makes changes and how it grows. Okay, but the rejected self in a Leo archetype is a self that has been overlooked. Okay. So anytime that it's done great, anytime it's had an achievement, anytime it believes that it deserves a big golden star, it's been ignored and or it's been overshadowed, right? Like it's the energy of, oh my God, St Kilda had their best year in 10 years. But at the same time, so did another team, and they got to the grand final. Right. So it's like they have their own achievement, but nobody sees it because somebody else overshadows it. That's part of it. And it's also like not getting the recognition that you believe you deserve. Okay, so for a football team, this is kind of like when St Kilda do something good, maybe their fans are not giving them the recognition they deserve. Maybe the media is not giving them the recognition they deserve. So it causes this rejected self to fight for attention. And it gives them this like need to be seen, but they're not quite sure how to do it. They're not quite comfortable how to do it. And again, when that comes back to the rest of their energy, we can see how it all works together. So they also have this wound of identity, right? Where they're constantly trying to figure out who the fuck they are. And I think that's very obvious. And I think we can see how that comes through when they don't know who the fuck they are. And then they all just kind of run into each other and become these bumbling, like, soldiers of frustration. So then we get to this luck energy and this trigger point, which is very fucking interesting as well. Like their luck energy is through emotions, right? Which is funny because they don't think they have any. So in order for them to be in their most fortunate point and be able to move forward through luck, they actually need to create an environment that feels safe and family-like. Okay. And I think in some ways they're doing that, but I think it's being done very toxically because of some of their other energies. All right. And so then this trigger point is hard work and discipline, which of course it is, because that means that once you can lock in and be disciplined, we then get to experience like a karmic trigger point of choosing a new destination. All right. Of being a new version of yourself. So some of the things that are particularly funny and interesting to me, and I'll put it together for you in a little bit of a story. Okay. So the St Kilda football team, I mean, they're here to learn how to work very hard without getting recognized for it, with an understanding that the recognition will come, right? Because the Taurus archetype knows that hard work gets reward, that hard work eventually gets to be seen, but it sort of has an expectation that it should always be seen, but there is an understanding that eventually hard work pays off. And so the St Kilda football team is sort of here to learn how to just put in the work without trying to be the center of attention, without trying to be egotistical, without trying to be the best, biggest, most shiniest, most loud energy team. They're just here to kind of put in work, right? And to learn how to move away from this assumption that there's always a fucking war chest. Now, that's particularly interesting because I think we can see in the way that they've attracted players. And I saw somebody else this morning, Liam Ryan, I think, from West Coast, also wanting to go over and be a part of the St Kilda football team, is one of the places that he's put his hand up for. But we're looking at the TDK and the JSOS situation here. And we can see very interesting things. That one, I mean, JSOS and TDK, big names, right? So that materialistic relationship style, tick. right? Because now, oh, look who we've got. Look who we've got. Okay. So it's a little bit of a bragging right situation. Okay. But it also lifts up this inner belief system of this uniqueness of self because TDK and JSOS both have very unique personalities within the media. Okay. Then it's made this change by, I mean, a little bit scattered, right? A little bit dramatic, but it's also made these changes by challenging kind of what is expected, right? And they're trying to fill the holes in this wound of identity by bringing in these characters that already have, their own identity. And they're doing so by using the fucking comfort zone war chest of just having money. And the interesting part is that for them to grow, they do have to learn how to be seen, how to have their expression out there without being egotistical. And that's very difficult because they can only really see things from their own perspective. So when they get in their head about being treated unfairly, or when they get in their head about anything that is in that toddler kind of why energy, it completely negates everything that they're here to learn. Now, something else particularly interesting to look at is the fact that Ross, their daddy Ross, is a Scorpio archetype. Okay. So the way that he can motivate them is correct. The way that he pulls them into their comfort zone is correct. All right. But this is why I think he's the wrong person. Because we need to be moving away from the comfort zone. We need to be moving more into a future focus. So Ross Lyon is an example of the motivation and the comfort of the past for St Kilda. And because they have finished a 160-year cycle of past wounds, they actually should be looking for a new coach, not just these materialistic, loud personalitied players. Okay. So let me just run you through a little bit of the energy of Ross while we are looking at this energy of the St Kilda team overall. Okay. So Ross is very fucking untrusting. He's very untrusting with how he builds his relationships. There is a depth and an obsessive energy to it, though, right? So but I am untrusting, but once we're in a relationship, I'm obsessed. I'm going to get to know everything about you because then I know how to motivate you. Then I know how to get around any of your systems that won't allow me to manipulate things. Okay. Now, because he's this energy, very straight talker, right? Like his communication style will fucking hurt feelings, right? Will hurt feelings. So that also matches up with the St Kilda football team because their communication style is fiery and start shit and they lie about their feelings anyway. So he absolutely can come in and be blunt as fuck and tell everybody what he thinks of them. And that's not going to upset the emotional apple cart. Okay. Now, emotionally, he doesn't, there's a lot of judgment to his own emotional state. There is also like a lot of critiquing of other people's emotional states and whether or not they're being too much of a sook, which is funny. But it means he also notices the details in people's emotional states. And that is interesting for someone who is very much programmed by a lot of vindictive, jealous kind of energy. He is very much someone who analyzes and critiques the way that people go about their life, how they motivate themselves, what their masculine energy sits right. Okay. So this is somebody who would be very observant to the way that people hold their own authority. Okay. Now, he also has this growth style in luck. Okay. And he is somebody who really had to develop his own idea of a masculine energy. The likelihood of his father growing up not really being very much around or not being emotionally supportive, that kind of makes him build his own idea of what motivation is, of what discipline is. Okay. Now, he makes changes, very small habitual changes. They'd be very difficult for anyone to notice from the outside. So, how he does things internally, very habitually. Okay. Now, he is very self judgmental. Let's put that in there as well. There is a huge quality to him that is very judgmental, particularly about things revolving around worth and money. Okay. So, his future focus is also in this Taurus archetype of being focused on needing to work hard to earn money, right? So he also shares this comfort zone of the fucking war chest idea, right? But he has a wound of faith, and he has the ability to really like how he's shown up, because he would be a very spiritual person, but I doubt that he accepts that about himself, because he's had a lot of judgment growing up about how he does things. He's very intuitive, but like the darker type of intuitive. Like he is somebody who notices people's guilt and shame, and he files that shit away in case he needs to use it. There is a huge vindictive quality to him, and he is somebody who would take vengeance quite seriously, and long game fucking vengeance. Okay. So the way that his energy goes with the St Kilda football team, very funny to me, because he is somebody who notices the details about people and how they motivate themselves. He is somebody who notices the details about people's emotional state. He is somebody who can build somewhat of a delusion around what discipline looks like. So he quite literally is somebody who can fire up a team of people and make them feel all at one. We are the same. We are the same. We are a family. We are an army of one. Let's fucking go, right? He can fire them up. And then he can point them in the direction of where his vengeance needs to be taken out. And once the St Kilda football team has been pointed in one direction, that's it, mate. Because their ego self, their emotional style, their communication style, their relationship style, none of those things, once they're locked in, go deep. None of them ask questions. None of them then need to know, oh, why is this vengeance? Right? They wouldn't even be questioning the vengeance, because their motivation and aggression style is already locked into it, because their dad knows how to talk to them. Right? So part of Ross's lessons that he's here to learn are the same part that St Kilda are here to learn, right? And this future goal, this like where Ross is here to learn something in the same Taurus energy, that's very likely to be his career energy as well, right? So it's going to be a very interesting 2026 is all I'm going to say, because some of the energies that are shifting are going to really have some truth coming out. And this starts in December. Really have some truth coming out about the way that Ross communicates. He is about to go through a pretty heavy eclipse cycle in September. Okay. So we've got these eclipses coming tomorrow, and which will be the 7th. So if I get this uploaded by then, this will be accurate. So the 7th and the 8th, we are in pretty heavy eclipse energy. And for Ross in particular, this is the energy of having to deal with his mother wound, how that made him very self-critical of his masculine energy, his anger, and how he motivates himself, how he's had an inability to make change, and all of his internal self-criticism. Okay. Now, that eclipse is going to be happening at the end of the month. And the one that we have tomorrow is his father wound, and is his childhood wounding around belief in himself and around his spiritual and emotional connection with himself. He's very likely attracted a number of people toward him throughout his life that have not been good for him. And his relationship energy that is quite obsessive is very likely to have held on to those things. And I think that's why he is still the coach of the St Kilda football team, not because he's meant to be there, but because he's kind of locked in without understanding that he needs to be moving forward away from these wounds that he's got. So I think it's a very interesting time for Ross Lyon. And yeah, next year is going to be really interesting for him, because both him and St Kilda will have their growth style activated by the eclipses starting in February. So that means that he will be in a trigger point moment in regards to having to find a bit more truth with how he communicates, and a bit more truth with what it is that he's communicating. And the eclipse in February is a massive trigger point for him, uh, about how he is being authentic. So his overall kind of sneaky energy, there's a lot to him that we don't see. There's a lot to him that he hides because he's very untrusting of other people. And he absolutely wouldn't trust his mouth, because his mouth will burn holes in people's souls. So the way his energy matches with St Kilda is on fucking point to being able to send an army of frustrated soldiers out for his own vengeance. Do I think he should be there long term? No, I absolutely do not. In fact, I think it is somewhat keeping them stuck in a cycle by having him. And I think they need someone who is a Capricorn energy as a coach, maybe even someone who is within a Taurus energy. So someone who is a bit more hard work focused, right? I think probably a Capricorn. Melbourne Demons, they got rid of their coach. He's a Capricorn. Maybe you want to look at him. Because the Aries energy is the baby, right? So it needs a stable, rule-making dad to come in. And instead, they've got someone who seems very powerful, but who is using them for his own vengeful storylines. Great. Stunning story for the AFL. And yeah, good luck, TDK. You are definitely not going to get along with Ross. Okay. And JSOS, babe, you will be in a constant battle of words with that man. Constantly. And he is going to remind you of the way that your father makes you feel about yourself. So I'm not sure you've both made very good choices. Although at the moment you are acting like stomping foot little babies, so you will fit right in. But do you, JSOS, you don't. TDK potentially. Do you both have the ability to become a mindless, frustrated soldier for the St Kilda football team? They might be activated in 2026 to have a good year, but that's going to come down to a lot of change and a lot of having to value the uniqueness of the people. And I don't know how you do that, Ross, because there's a very selfish energy to that man. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. So I hope you found that interesting. And if anyone from the St Kilda fan base would like to contact me, because I thought that was particularly interesting. And so when I look at the energy story of the St Kilda football team, what are they here to do? Well, the St Kilda football team are here to release their requirement to be seen and valued and lifted up like they're the fucking kings of the world. They are here to learn how to work hard and be modest about it. And they're here to learn how to lose without needing to start a fight. So it's my belief that the people connected to each football club are on a similar journey, which means that a lot of the St Kilda Football Club are on a similar journey of having to overcome wounds of the past that gave them some sort of comfort, stability within the material world, whether that be, being gifted some kind of inheritance or having parents that are happy for you to live at home well into your adulthood, or having access to things that make you quite privileged, right? In the past, the journey is to learn how to be an independent hard worker and to earn your own reward. And that is the energetic journey of the St Kilda Football Club. And at the moment, they are stuck in a vengeful cycle because Mr. Ross Lyon, their dad, is pointing them in the direction of where he would like his vengeance to go. So I think you're stuck a little bit. I'm going to be very interested to see how this plays out, because part of the energies coming next year is going to be affected the rejected self energy of the St Kilda Football Club, meaning that a majority of that collective is going to be fighting for attention. And that's why you had to call in the big names. That's why you had to keep your big names, because next year you are going to be screaming them from the roof to try and get attention. Good luck with that. And I hope when the St Kilda Football Club meets with Carlton in the future, they get to have a little ego lesson. Go Blues.